Good morning and welcome to the, I can't believe it's 2024, January 2024 open meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Madam Secretary, would you please introduce our agenda this morning?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning to you and good morning, Commissioners. For today's meeting, you will hear 3 items and 5 enforcement actions for your consideration. First, you will consider a report and order and further notice of proposed rulemaking to ensure participation in and enhance the use of its disaster information reporting system, where service providers report on their operational status during emergencies. Second, you will consider a report and order requiring wireless providers to implement location-based routing for wireless calls and real-time texts to 911 in order to reduce misrouting and improve emergency response times. Third, you will consider an order on reconsideration addressing the issue raised in 3 petitions for reconsideration filed in response to the Orbital debris mitigation report and order released in 2020, which comprehensively updated the Commission's existing rules regarding orbital debris mitigation. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, you will consider separate enforcement actions. This is your agenda for today. Please note the items listed as third, restricted adjudicatory matter, and 10th, modernizing and expanding access to the 70, 80, 90 gigahertz bands in the January 18th, 2024 Sunshine Notice have been adopted by the Commission and deleted from today's agenda. Today's first item is titled Resilient Networks, Amendments to Part 4 of the Commission's Rules Concerning Disruptions to Communications, and new Part 4 of the Commission's Rules Concerning Disruptions to Communications. And the item will be presented by the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, and Deborah Jordan, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good morning, Ms. Jordan.
Good morning,
Please
Chairwoman
proceed.
Rosenworcel and Commissioners. Today we present a second report and order and second further notice of proposed rulemaking to improve network reliability, resilience, and operational transparency during disasters. As you know, certain communications providers are required to report network outages to the FCC's Network Outage Reporting System, or NORS, on an ongoing basis. During disasters, the FCC may activate its Disaster Information Reporting System, or DIRS, to gain greater information about the operational status of networks, keep public safety officials and the general public informed, and support service restoration. In case of DIRS, however, industry participation is voluntary. Much has changed since the FCC established DIRS in 2007, including the increasing frequency and severity of hurricanes, wildfires, and other natural disasters. We are now activating and relying on DIRS more than ever to inform emergency response. But due to the voluntary nature of DIRS participation, there are information gaps, and when providers choose to not to file reports. In addition, some communications providers are not required to file in NORS, which also provides information gaps. The item before you today is intended to close these gaps and enhance public safety. With me today from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau to present the item is Logan Bennett, her first time presenting, Attorney Advisor in the Bureau's Cybersecurity and Communications Reliability Division. I'd like to thank the Bureau staff who worked on this item, as well as other bureaus and offices that contributed. And now to Ms. Bennett.
Thank you, Chief Jordan. Good morning, Chairwoman Rosenworcel and Commissioners. The second report and order before you today would require specified service providers, including cable communications, wireline, wireless, and interconnected VoIP providers, to report on their infrastructure status in the relevant geographic areas whenever DIRS is activated. If adopted, this order would help bridge the information gaps present in the current voluntary system, which can impair efficient emergency response. Providers required to report in DERS would be required to submit a final report within 24 hours of DERS deactivation. This report would include restoration plans for affected infrastructure. To lessen the reporting burdens and streamline the process, the order would suspend a provider's NORS reporting obligations while they are required to report in DERS. The associated second further notice of proposed rulemaking would seek comment on whether to require additional industry segments to report in NORS and DERS. If adopted, it would seek comment on requiring television and radio broadcasters to report in NORS and DERS, subject to a simplified reporting process. It would also seek comment on whether to require satellite providers report in DERS, whether modifications to existing DERS satellite forms are warranted, and whether the NORS reporting thresholds for satellite providers should be modified to reflect changes in that technology. In addition, the further notice would seek comment on the extent to which FirstNet should report in NORS and/or DERS. It would also seek comment on the extent to which broadband internet access service providers, or BIAS, should be required to report in NORS and/or DERS, and what the appropriate threshold would be for such reporting. Additionally, the further notice would seek comment on whether any provider that is required to file in DERS should be required to supply the Commission with after-action reports. These would detail how providers' networks fared during the emergency or disaster event. Finally, the further notice would seek comment on whether DERS filers should be required to provide the location of mobile recovery assets during a disaster response, as well as other specifications of those assets. The Bureau recommends adoption of this second report in order and second further notice of proposed rulemaking, and we request editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks so much to the team for the work on this item. I've had the chance, including with the chair, to visit a number of areas impacted by a range of natural disasters. We were together in Louisiana not too long after Hurricane Ida went through there. I've had a chance to be in Florida a couple weeks after Hurricane Michael went through there back in 2018, as well as with some wildfire crews in California after the Dixie Fire went through there in 2021. And obviously one of the things that you learn and that we learned on our trip together is, the vital importance of connectivity, particularly for 911 in connection to PSAPs. And so I'm glad that we have been engaged in a process that the chair's been leading to make sure that we have smart, balanced, but the right regulatory approach to make sure that we can provide the information necessary to ensure that these communications either continue to work or are restored as quickly as possible. So thanks again to the chair for her continued work on this, and I support the item. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning that trip to Louisiana. It definitely left its mark on me, too. Commissioner Starks.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. When the Commission created the Disaster Information Reporting System in 2007, known as DERS, the nation was dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. We watched, shocked and terrified at what we saw in New Orleans and the surrounding communities, and then we got to work. We realized that the lack of information about network operation and repair status was hampering recovery efforts, and that by working together, the Commission and network providers could do more. Carriers could report voluntarily their operational status and restoration information during and after major disasters, which the Commission could then use and share with relevant authorities to benefit Americans. DERS was a good start, but it wasn't quite perfect. Even now, simply too many providers decline to participate, blunting its effectiveness and restricting the availability of information necessary to determine the status of the repair, replacement, restoration of this critical infrastructure. And so, as it turns out, these gaps in knowledge during disasters and recovery can lead to significant issues. Our federal partners, such as FEMA, state and local governments and authorities rely truly on the FCC to help inform their decision-making on how to best serve their communities. And so without that full picture of communication network status in affected areas, authorities can be limited in their efforts. And so severe weather events, like we heard, harm these communication networks, causing outages. The wildfires in Hawaii, Hurricane Ian, they are becoming more common. It's time for us to act. And so our decision today to require cable, wireline, wireless, interconnected VoIP providers to report their infrastructure status information in DERS when the Commission activates it is timely, will support consumers, will help Americans. I also do support seeking comment on expanding our DERS filing obligations to other communication networks, including TV and radio broadcasters, satellite providers, broadcast internet access providers. These groups as well play an integral role in providing access in those communication times where it's really needed. And so it makes sense to consider them in the future for DERS, while at the same time seeking comment on what modifications may be necessary to ensure their participation is consistent with the unique challenges that they face in different transmission technologies. I got to echo Commissioner Carr. Thank you for your hard work and leadership on this, Chairwoman. It has my full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this order strengthening our disaster reporting rules. The further notice asks important questions, and I urge the Commission to continue to consider the burdens on small providers as it continues to evolve our rules in this area. I'd also like to thank staff for their work on this complex issue.
Thank you. And Commissioner Gomez.
Having the ability to evaluate how communications networks perform during emergencies and recovery is necessary to properly prepare and respond to disasters and to ensure that reliable communications services are available to communities when they need them most. We track communications infrastructure performance and outages during emergencies, natural disasters, and restoration efforts, and provide timely information to federal, state, local, and tribal emergency response officials. Our work today strengthens and considers expanding these efforts. This is important work, and I appreciate the collaborations with the Office of the Chairwoman, my fellow commissioners, and the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau to incorporate our feedback. Good job, Logan, and it's a good item.
Thank you, Commissioners. We live in a world of wild weather. Dramatic fires, floods, hurricanes, and blizzards are occurring more frequently and doing more damage than ever before. When these storms reach us, we reach for the phone, a screen, a radio, anyone or anything who can tell us what is going on and provide help when conditions are truly dire. In short, when disaster strikes, we want communications to work. That is why, for more than a decade and a half, the Federal Communications Commission has had something called the Disaster Information Reporting System, or DERS for short. Through DERS, communications providers voluntarily share with the FCC information about the operational status of their networks. This data is absolutely vital. When a storm hits, it means we have information that we can share with other federal agencies as well as state and local first responders, so they can assist those on the ground with facts about where disconnections have occurred, where operations are vulnerable, and where restoration efforts are required. But there are gaps in this data. Not every provider files data with us. Not every technology is covered by our rules. And I think these gaps are unacceptable. Everyone needs communications to work in crisis, so we're going to have to work to close them. And today we start that process. We make it mandatory for voice and cable providers to report their network operational status daily when DERS is being used during a disaster. In order to avoid duplication, we make clear that when DERS is activated, providers will not also have to file the same information in our required system for outage reporting, known as the Network Outage Reporting System, or NORS. But because we know that every storm is an opportunity to learn about what we can do to better keep communications up and running in a disaster, we also require a final report on network operational status after DERS is deactivated. This is a terrific first step, but we're going to have to go further because when the unthinkable occurs, we need to know that every one of us is reaching for a range of communications that may not be covered by our rules. And that's also why we include a rulemaking with our decision here today. My hope is that with this order and rulemaking, we're on course to keep more people connected in disaster. And now is not a moment too soon. Hurricane season starts in less than 6 months, and in the intervening time, it is a good bet that other storms are headed our way. one thing we know for sure is that Mother Nature's wrath will visit us again and again and again. So we're going to have to continue to update our policies on network resiliency so that communications are available when we need them most. So I want to share my appreciation for the staff who worked on this effort, and it's a whole lot of them. And they include Logan Bennett, John Blumenshine, Michael Kefia, Justin Kane, Sean Cochran, John Evanoff, David Firth, Bill Kang, Nikki McGinnis, and Erica Olson from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, along with Logan Bennett. Deborah Broderson, Doug Klein, Anjali Singh, and Shin Yu from the Office of General Counsel. Steve Kaufman, Cher Lee, Patrick Sun, Emily Talaga, and Alex Yankovich from the Office of Economics and Analytics. Stephen Duell, Carrie Murray, Troy Tanner, and Patrick Weber from the Space Bureau. Evan Baranoff, Stephen Brokart, Mark Colombo, Hillary DeNegro, Barbara Kreisman, Sean Mizigan, Evan Morris, Maria Malarkey, Brendan Murray, and Albert Schuldiner from the Media Bureau. Matthew Gibson, Jason Kolofsky, Sharon Lip, Jeremy Marcus, Ryan McDonald, and Elizabeth Muma from the Enforcement Bureau, Cameron Duncan and Carrie Hicks from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Adam Copeland, Melissa Kirkle, and Chris Laughlin from the Wireline Competition Bureau, and Joy Ragsdale and Shanna Wilkerson from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities. And last but not least, I really want to thank Commissioner Gomez and her staff for her thoughtful contributions to this rulemaking regarding FirstNet and public safety. She was there at NTIA when FirstNet was first got up and running, and we really benefit here today from having her insights. So thank you. With that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez.
Approved.
And the chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, please announce the next item on today's agenda.
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 2 on your agenda is titled Location-Based Routing for Wireless 911 Calls, and will also be presented by the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. Deborah Jordan, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And Ms. Jordan, welcome back, and please proceed.
Good morning, Chairwoman and Commissioners. If you call 911 for help, every minute, indeed every second, can matter. For first responders to reach you as quickly as possible, your call should be routed to the 911 call center that serves the jurisdiction from which you are calling. Unfortunately, that is not always the case if you call 911 from a wireless phone. Currently, most wireless 911 calls are routed to the 911 call center associated with the cell tower that first receives a call. Sometimes, however, the 911 call is routed to the wrong call center because the cell tower is not in the same jurisdiction as the 911 caller. This can happen when an emergency call is placed near a county border, for instance, and these misrouted 911 calls must be transferred from one call center to another, which can cause confusion and delay emergency response. It is estimated that millions of wireless 911 calls nationwide are misrouted every year. Today, we present a report and order with rules that would require wireless carriers to implement location-based routing nationwide for wireless calls and real-time text communications to 911. This means that these providers would use the location of the caller as opposed to the location of the cell tower to determine the appropriate route. These rules would help those in need of emergency assistance to reach the right 911 call center the first time and receive the help they need more quickly. With me today from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau are David Firth, Deputy Bureau Chief, and Rachel Ware, an Attorney Advisor in the Policy and Licensing Division. I would also like to thank the Bureau staff who worked on this item, as well as other bureaus and offices that contributed. Rachel?
Thank you, Chief Jordan. Good morning, Chairwoman and Commissioners. Since the Commission opened this proceeding in 2018, there have been significant technological advances, and the nationwide wireless providers have started to deploy and use location-based routing to route 911 calls. In December of 2022, the Commission proposed rules requiring wireless providers to implement this technology. Public safety commenters overwhelmingly supported the Commission's proposals. The record confirms that implementing location-based routing is technologically feasible and will significantly reduce wireless 911 voice call transfers, saving valuable time for both 911 call centers and callers. In light of these benefits, this report and order would require all wireless carriers to implement location-based routing nationwide for wireless calls and RTT communications to 911 call centers. Specifically, these rules would require wireless providers to deploy technology that supports location-based routing on their Internet Protocol or IP-based networks, meaning 4G LTE, 5G, and subsequent generations of IP-based networks. Wireless providers will be required to route wireless voice calls and RTT communications to 911 when caller location information is available to the network at time of routing and is ascertainable within a radius of 165 meters at a confidence level of at least 90%. In the absence of these conditions, wireless providers would be required to use alternative routing methods based on best available location information, which may include but is not limited to device-based or tower-based location information. The report and order would also require wireless providers to certify and submit evidence of compliance with location-based routing requirements, as well as submit one-time live call data reporting on routing methodologies so that the Commission can monitor implementation. Nationwide, wireless providers would have 6 months from the effective date of the rules to complete their ongoing deployments of this technology for wireless 911 voice calls, and non-nationwide wireless providers would be afforded a total of 24 months from the effective date of the rules to implement location-based routing for wireless 911 voice calls. All wireless providers would have a total of 24 months from the effective date of the rules to implement location-based routing for RTT communications to 911 call centers. The Bureau recommends that the Commission adopt this report and order and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Thanks so much. Next month marks the 56th anniversary of the first 911 call. It was placed by the Speaker of the Alabama House to the police station in Haleyville, Alabama, where a congressman picked up, because if you don't have politicians involved in a historic event, I guess it didn't really happen. That was 1968. Now, location actually with wireline 911 calls is a bit of a different issue, and in a lot of ways an easier challenge to solve. And the NOI for this particular proceeding is one that we launched back in 2018, and so I'm glad to see sort of the continuity and the bipartisan commitment to improving the accuracy of this, because when it comes to particularly wireless calls, of which there are millions to 911 every single year, it's a unique set of challenges we have to get right. My team tells me that there are up to 23 million calls to 911 that are misrouted from wireless phones every year. I asked them for the source of that. They said that Chairwoman Rosenworcel has said that stat multiple occasions, which, with rare exception, if the chair says it.
I've also been to Haleyville.
Yeah. With rare exception, if the chair says something, I'm gonna agree with it. This is not one of those exceptions, so I'll agree with that statistic at this point. So I'm pleased to support this item. I do think, obviously, as we look at three-digit numbers and the need to make sure they are routed correctly, it brings to mind for me another three-digit number of 988, which I think we're sort of working on as an agency to make sure that calls to 988 are routed to the appropriate answering point as well. I had the chance on a visit to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, to visit a 988 call center there that is just doing tremendous work. But again, there are multiple instances where that system yet hasn't developed in a way that's going to always get those phone calls to the right place. It's a difficult balance in terms of privacy, particularly in that context, but I'm hopeful that we'll find a path forward here at the agency to encourage a higher percentage of those 988 calls to also end up at the right answering point. But as to this item, again, it has my support, and thanks so much.
Good points. Commissioner Starks.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I am thrilled to see us move forward on location-based routing for wireless calls. As I remarked when we made this proposal, 911 routing accuracy is an area where, for a time, new technology actually risked taking us backwards. Let me tell you what I mean. In the early days, our phone networks reliably connected us to the right 911 operator. But after the mobile revolution, of course, the vast majority of 911 calls are now wireless. And so while our wireless networks on the whole have made it much easier to get help when and where we need it, many of them continue to use tower-based routing to figure out which PSAP should receive our emergency. And that has led to, as we heard, a number of, in the order of millions, 911 calls each year going to the wrong jurisdiction. And in fact, the record shows that tower-based misroute percentages hover around a startling 11 or 12%. That's just an average, mind you. Some jurisdictions report that 3 in 10 or more of the 911 calls they receive should have gone elsewhere. And we've heard even of higher rates if you have the misfortune of calling from an area right along the lines of a PSAP boundary. I know I have visited a number of PSAPs over the course of my commissionership, and this ranks amongst the top of their concerns, in addition to having the right level of staffing, being able to keep people as well. The good news is that new technologies have also given us much better ways of determining a caller's location than simply assuming that they're located at the cell tower handling the call. And so let's make sure that we use them as much as we can across the country. Thank you to the chair. Chief, thank you for your hard work. Rachel, always happy to tell you what great work you're doing. Proud of you. Continue that hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm, of course, happy to support this item. Routing 911 calls to the correct PSAP can make the difference between emergency services being able to help and arriving too late to make a difference. I'd like to thank the staff for 6 years of hard work on this item. It will surely save lives. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Gomez.
Today, we require mobile phone providers to use location-based technology to route calls to the correct PSAP so that emergency responders can go to the right place in an emergency. This could save lives. I'm encouraged that one of the nationwide providers has already transitioned its entire network to using location-based 911 routing because it demonstrates that better 911 routing is a feasible technical solution for carriers. Today's report and order simply sets a deadline for the remaining nationwide providers that have already begun successfully deploying location-based 911 routing in portions of their networks to keep going and to get it done. But I'm also pleased to see that the smaller carriers are allotted a little more time to catch up given the limited resources at their disposal. Thank you to the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau for their important work of encouraging the industry to improve the accuracy of 911 calling in this report and order.
Thank you, commissioners. If you have ever dialed 911, you know that seconds matter. You want that call to be answered by someone who can send help fast and to the right place. As simple as it sounds, it doesn't always work that way. I know because I've seen this system fall short. And years ago, and I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it crystallizes this problem like nothing else. I was in Little Rock. I visited the 911 call center downtown. While I was there, the professional staff showed me how dialing 911 on a wireless phone while standing in that building would not get answered in Little Rock. Instead, it would be answered by a call center in North Little Rock on the other side of the Arkansas River. That's because the call was routed based on the location of the closest cell tower and not the actual location of the person dialing. Now, this slows emergency response because it requires transferring the call to get to the right public safety officials who can then send the right response. And what I saw in Arkansas is not that uncommon. In fact, based on my office's latest estimates, as many as 23 million wireless calls each year may be misrouted to the wrong public safety answering point. Every one of those calls leads to delay. Every one of those calls slows response to an emergency. And we're changing that here today. We're adopting rules requiring all wireless carriers to implement location-based routing nationwide for calls and real-time texts to 911 call centers. This means that when a call travels on IP-based networks, public safety officials will receive emergency calls based on the location of the person calling, not the location of the nearest cell tower. It means that back in Arkansas, that call I made to 911 in Little Rock, in the 911 call center, would get answered in Little Rock and not on the other side of the river. Some of our largest carriers have already started using location-based routing technology in their networks, so we know it works. Now we look forward to having it work everywhere. And I want to thank you to the staff who worked on this effort, another big team for a big effort from the Public Safety Bureau. So let's thank Deborah Jordan, David Firth, John Evanoff, Brenda Boykin, Jill Coogan, Zachary DeLeo, Thomas Eng, Jay English, Barbara Kunkel, Rasul Safavian, and Rachel Ware from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, Susie Rosen-Singleton and Bill Wallace from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Jeremy Marcus, Shannon Lipp, Elizabeth Muma, and Matthew Gibson from the Enforcement Bureau, Joy Ragsdale and Shauna Wilkerson from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, Anjali Singh, Doug Klein, Keith McCrickard, and Elliot Tarloff from the Office of General Counsel, Paulo Lopez, Ken Lynch, Patrick Yankovich from the Office of Economics of Analytics, and Cameron Duncan from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, along with Elizabeth Drogula, Christy Schumann, Jody May, Callie Crooker, Ty Covey, and Brian Cruikshank from the Wireline Competition Bureau. And with that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr,
Approve.
Commissioner Starks,
Approve.
Commissioner Symington,
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item's adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, will you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 3 on your agenda is titled Mitigation of Orbital Debris in the New Space Age and will be presented by the Space Bureau. Julie Kearney, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And to Ms. Kearney, the chief of our newest bureau, please proceed.
There we go. Wonderful. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. I'm honored to be here today to introduce a Space Bureau item to be considered at a commission meeting. Today, the Space Bureau will present for your consideration an order on reconsideration of the 2020 decision updating the Commission's rules for orbital debris mitigation. This reconsideration order, if adopted, will uphold the current regulatory environment for orbital debris mitigation while providing additional clarity and guidance for satellite operators and reinforces the Commission's commitment to space safety. Joining me at the table from the Space Bureau are Troy Tanner, Deputy Chief, Carl Kensinger, Special Counsel, Marissa Velez, Chief of the Satellite Programs and Policy Division, and Sam Carty, Electronics Engineer in the Satellite Licensing Division. I offer the Bureau's thanks to our colleagues in the Enforcement Bureau and the Office of the General Counsel for their assistance with this item. Sam Carty will present the item. This is Sam's first presentation at a commission meeting. And now to Sam.
Thank you, Chief Kearney. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. In 2020, the Commission adopted its first comprehensive update of its orbital debris rules since their adoption in 2004. The order sought to improve and clarify these rules based on the experiences gained in the satellite licensing process and various improvements in orbital debris mitigation guidelines, practices, and technologies. This order on reconsideration addresses 3 petitions for reconsideration filed in response to that order. The first petition asked the Commission to reconsider information disclosure requirements relating to satellite maneuverability, large system disposal reliability, the use of deployment devices, and the use of certain types of liquids. The second petition seeks reconsideration or clarification of the Commission's orbital debris mitigation rules as applied to non-U.S. licensed systems seeking the U.S. market access. The third petition seeks adoption of a new rule addressing issues related to the orbital separation of large non-geostationary orbit, or NGSO, constellations. This order on reconsideration clarifies the alignment of the Commission's rules with other U.S. orbital debris mitigation policy documents, like the U.S. Government Orbital Debris Mitigation Standard Practices and Space Policy Directive 3, and addresses concerns raised in the first petition concerning the burden and adoption information disclosure requirements may have on applicants. This order on reconsideration also provides clarification on the adopted disclosure requirements pertaining to satellite maneuverability and additional resources in order to foster a deeper understanding of these requirements by operators and promote responsible practices in satellite maneuvering. Additionally, this order on reconsideration addresses the applicability of the 0.99 disposal reliability goal specifically for large satellite systems and clarifies the Commission's disclosure rules regarding the use of free-flying deployment devices and providing supplementary guidance for satellite operators on methods for conducting a recontact risk analysis. This order on reconsideration also discusses and clarifies the requirements for assessing and limiting the release of persistent liquids in space and provides additional factors that operators should take into consideration, including containment effectiveness, protection against debris strikes, and operational altitudes. Lastly, this order on reconsideration clarifies the application of the Commission's orbital debris mitigation rules to non-U.S. licensed space stations and provides additional discussion on the Commission's decision not to adopt a maximum orbital variance for NGSO systems or a required separation between orbital locations. The Space Bureau recommends the adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits.
Thank you. We'll now hear comments from the bench. We start with Commissioner Carr.
Thanks so much to the team for working on this. Over the years, I've expressed a little skepticism that the FCC itself should be the lead agency when it comes to setting a lot of the standards for orbital debris mitigation. After all, the core competencies there, analyzing collision risk, spacecraft maneuverability, ionic sodium, potassium droplets. They're not things that are usually conceived of as within the core competencies of the FCC. But back in 2020, when we adopted this order, I worked with my colleagues, including Commissioner Starks, to make sure that we were lining up the FCC's approach with the positions articulated by agencies that do have aerospace expertise, including NASA. So I largely agreed at the end of the day with the approach we took in 2020. And since here we are largely keeping that cut in place, I entirely agree with where we end up today. So thanks again to the team for the hard work on this. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Starks.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you so much to the team for the hard work here. This, of course, is something that we all have been focused on. I'm not the only one up here on the dais who has been focused on orbital debris in needing to stay ahead of that, preserve a safe environment for the many new and exciting systems that we have, not to mention, of course, the astronauts that are in orbit as well. And this is not easy work. It is quite technical. For over 20 years, as we've heard, we've been working on this, and like the space industry itself, this issue is deeply technical and always evolving. So glad that we were able to resolve these petitions here today. It has my support.
Thank you. Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. While I support today's item, I would be remiss if I did not restate my conviction that the FCC should apply the same orbital debris rules to both U.S. licensed providers and market access licensees authorized in other countries. The FCC must move in this direction as a high priority policy goal. Our current process allows non-U.S. licensed space stations to satisfy orbital debris rules by showing that debris mitigation plans for the space stations, for which U.S. market access is requested, are subject to direct oversight by the licensing country. While in principle such an approach may be sound, in practice it often places U.S. licensed providers and ultimately the United States as a policy leader at somewhat of a disadvantage. American companies should not be penalized for complying with a rigorous and advanced domestic regime that takes contemporary realities into account. The American government should not tolerate behavior from market access licensees that it would not accept from domestic corporations. The current process implicitly approves debris mitigation regimes that are typically not as robust or as clear-cut as the American regimes, which incidentally disadvantages U.S. licensed providers. This is why I've advocated for extending the FCC's orbital debris rules to market access providers. This not only levels the playing field for U.S. licensed providers, but also acts as a regulatory hook for creating default rules for all commercial operators. We can create a unitary set of clear and flexible rules for safe commercial space operation for all countries, which only makes sense, because in space there are no borders. I therefore once again call upon the FCC to reconsider the current approach so that we can firm up the U.S.'s global leadership on orbital debris mitigation policy and incentivize responsible modern stewardship of the space debris environment. But as for today's item, I would like to thank, as always, the Space Bureau staff for all their hard work and expertise.
Commissioner Gomez.
Thank you. So, like so many areas that the Commission oversees, space policy in particular makes you consider where we have been and where we are going. For me, these issues are near and dear to my heart because the last time I was at the FCC, I was the Deputy Chief of the International Bureau, which was the former home of the Satellite Division, which was responsible, of course, for processing satellite licenses. Of course, that was back in 2006. In the 18 years since then, so much has changed. The commercial space industry has grown significantly. The technology has changed. We've gone from small constellations of large satellites to large constellations of small satellites. The market has changed, of course. We've gone from 800 satellites in operations to thousands. And notably, this agency has changed, thanks to the leadership of the chairwoman, in establishing the Space Bureau last year to address the rapid growth in the commercial space industry. As Commissioner Starks noted, this is hard work. It actually is rocket science. And I am grateful to have a Space Bureau which is designed to support U.S. leadership in the space economy and is comprised of so many talented experts in satellite and space policy. Thank you to the Space Bureau staff for its work on this item, and to Julie Carney for leading the Space Bureau on this mission. And good job, Sam.
Thank you, Commissioners. Today we take the next step in our space innovation agenda. We're making clear that we're supporting sustainable skies and a growing space economy. Now, both of these things matter, and to understand why, a little bit of history helps. It was roughly 6 decades ago that the first space age took off. And since that time, humanity has put more than 10,000 satellites into our skies. More than half of those satellites are now defunct. Many of them were launched with the understanding that the heavens were vast, and we could just abandon that stuff that was circumnavigating the globe. At the time, we thought it was actually cheaper to do that than to take this debris out of service and out of orbit. But we were wrong. We know this now because the second space age is here, and it's an opportunity to get this right. At the moment, we have applications for more than 56,000 satellites pending before this agency. To be clear, that is more than 5 times the number launched since the beginning of the first space age. So if we want space activity to continue to grow, we're going to have to care for our skies and make sure operators clean up after themselves. This is because when defunct devices are left up in orbit, it increases the risk of collision and malfunction in every system that counts on satellites. Orbital debris degrades the environment for all future space activity. So the policies we have put in place to address it, they really matter. And to demonstrate this, let me offer an example of just how dangerous it is to leave debris in our skies. Consider the story of a single screwdriver. 4 decades ago, a screwdriver slipped out of an astronaut's grasp. It has been circling in low Earth orbit at up to 21,600 miles an hour ever since. That is 10 times faster than a bullet with the punch of a grenade. So even an innocuous screwdriver in our skies can wreak havoc. Now at the FCC, we address satellites and not screwdrivers, but the example is still potent. It makes clear that we are in the business of authorizing space activity with satellites, so we're going to have to do so in a way that decreases the risk of collision and increases opportunities in space. That's why, as part of our space innovation agenda, the FCC put in place rules that reduce by 80% the amount of time satellite operators have to deorbit retired satellites. To understand what that means in practice, it used to be that operators of low Earth orbiting satellites could just leave them in our skies for 25 years after useful life. We've cut that time down to 5 years. This is big because it helps reduce the risk of collisions that can cause space communications failures. It is also why, as part of our space innovation agenda, the FCC is holding operators accountable when they do not comply with our orbital debris policies. In fact, last year, we announced the first ever enforcement action against a company for its failure to comply with a deorbiting plan. It is also why we're taking this action today. In this decision, we reaffirm the updates we made earlier to our orbital debris mitigation rules and offer additional guidance for satellite operators deploying their systems. Among other things, we provide clear examples to assist with compliance with reporting requirements for maneuverability and the use of detachable deployment devices. In short, we're reinforcing our commitment to space sustainability. This is because it is a fundamental part of our space innovation agenda. But we're not going to stop here. We recognize supporting the second space age means more than just addressing future satellite debris. It requires cleaning up existing debris. That's why yesterday I shared with my colleagues a new proposal for licensing space stations engaged in in-space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing, or ISAM operations. Now, this framework will include support for a range of new technologies, and those technologies include ones that will help collect and remove space debris. And I look forward to working with them on its adoption. So thank you to the staff behind this effort, including Julie Carney, Troy Tanner, Carl Kensinger, Scott McCool, Jeanette Kennedy, Marissa Velez, Guillermo Belt, Janine Poltrinari, Alexandra Horn, Samuel Carty, and Sankar Persard from the Space Bureau, Jason Kolofsky, Josh Zeldis, and Neil McNeil from the Enforcement Bureau, and Anjali Singh, Shin Yu, Dave Konskal, and Deborah Broderson from the Office of General Counsel. And with that, we will take a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr?
Approve.
Commissioner Starks?
Approve.
Commissioner Symington?
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item's adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, can you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, items 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on your agenda are enforcement actions and will be presented by the Enforcement Bureau. Michael Rhodes, Director of the Field Office, will give the introduction.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. Because these items are enforcement actions, we are going to switch the order up just as the Commission has done in past cases that involve similar presentations at open meetings. As with all open meeting items, the Bureau circulated these to every commissioner at least 3 weeks ago, but there is a long-standing practice at the agency that we do not publicly disclose parties of enforcement matters unless and until the Commission decides to take action. So for these types of items, this means that the agency formally votes on the item, then here's a brief presentation from the Bureau before proceeding to any statements that the commissioners may have. And this process ensures that sensitive matters will not be publicly disclosed until the FCC has voted to take action. So we're going to follow that precedent here with quite a few items before us. So we will now proceed to a vote on enforcement action item number 4. Commissioner Carr?
Approve.
Commissioner Starks?
Approve.
Commissioner Symington?
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item's adopted with editorial privileges if requested. On item 5, Commissioner Carr?
Approve.
Commissioner Starks?
Approve.
Commissioner Symington?
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges if requested. On item 6, Commissioner Carr?
Approve.
Commissioner Starks?
Approve.
Commissioner Symington?
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item's adopted with editorial privileges if requested. And on item 7, Commissioner Carr?
Approve.
Commissioner Starks?
Approve.
Commissioner Symington?
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item's adopted with editorial privileges if requested. On item 8, Commissioner Carr?
Approve.
Commissioner Starks?
Approve.
Commissioner Symington?
Approve.
Commissioner Gomez?
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item's adopted with editorial privileges if requested. All right, that was a whole lot of process. So, Mr. Rhodes, please proceed with introducing the items.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Thank you for your consideration and all your votes on today's enforcement items. 5 notices of apparent liability for forfeiture, or NALs, against Fabrice Polynice, Brindley Marshall, Wilford Solomon, Cameron Brown, and Abdias Datus for engaging in pirate radio broadcasting in violation of Section 511 of the Communications Act. The 2020 Preventing Illegal Radio Abuse Through Enforcement Act, or PIRATE Act, requires the Commission to perform yearly pirate radio sweeps in the top 5 radio markets. These 5 NALs stem from the first pirate sweep conducted in the Miami, Florida market. They underscore the Commission's continuing commitment to curtailing pirate radio broadcasting. With me at the table are Matthew Gibson, Assistant Bureau Chief, and from the Office of the Field Director, David Marks, Chief Counsel, and Reggie Brashears, Field Counsel, and Reggie will now present these items.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners. Unlicensed radio stations, also known as pirate radio stations, operate illegally. They undermine the Commission's efforts to manage limited radio spectrum and interference with radio stations, which can endanger the public that depend on licensed radio stations for important public safety messages, including emergency alert system transmissions that provide vital information regarding weather and other dangers. Accordingly, Commission action in this area is essential. The first item proposes a forfeiture of $2,391,097 against Fabrice Polynice for pirate radio broadcasting in North Miami, Florida. This is the maximum allowable forfeiture under Section 511 of the Act and the Commission's rules. Polynice is one of the longest operating pirates in the Miami area, having received a $25,000 forfeiture order from the Enforcement Bureau in 2013 and a $144,000 forfeiture order that was jointly and severally with Harold and Vernice Saito from the Commission in 2018. As part of the 2023 Miami Pirate Radio Sweep, agents located Polynice's station, Radio Touche Deuce, operating 3 times in February and March of 2023, and based on both observations and station advertising, found the station operating without authorization on a total of 22 days. Given Polynice's history of pirate radio operation, multiple forfeitures, and repeated warnings by the Commission, the Enforcement Bureau thanks the Commission for adopting the NAL and its $2,391,097 proposed forfeiture, the maximum penalty allowable under the Pirate Act. The second case involves Brindley Marshall, operator of the pirate radio station Hot 97.7 FM in Miami, Florida. Agents from the Miami field office previously documented Marshall's pirate radio station operating without authorization 7 times between March of 2016 and October of 2019, and issued 4 notices of unlicensed operation. During the 2023 Miami Pirate Radio Sweep, agents found the station operating again without authorization 3 times in February and March of 2023. Given Marshall's history of pirate radio operation and his disregard for multiple warnings, the Enforcement Bureau thanks the Commission for adopting the NAL and its $358,665 proposed forfeiture, the maximum penalty allowable under the Pirate Act for 3 days of violations. The third case involves Wilfred Solomon, operator of the pirate radio station Radio Ideal in Lauderdale Lakes, Florida. Agents from the Miami field office documented Solomon's pirate radio station operating without authorization 7 times between July and October of 2018 and issued Solomon 2 notices of unlicensed operation. When Solomon failed to cease operation, the U.S. Marshal Service, with the assistance of FCC field agents and field counsel, executed a federal court-ordered warrant en rem and seized the transmission equipment in October of 2018. Solomon was still not deterred, and as part of the 2023 Miami Pirate Radio Sweep, agents found the station again operating without authorization 3 times in February and March of 2023. Given Solomon's history of pirate radio operation and his disregard for multiple warnings against him, including the seizure of his equipment, the Enforcement Bureau thanks the Commission for adopting the NAL and its $358,665 proposed forfeiture, the maximum penalty allowable under the Pirate Act for 3 days of operations. Fourth case involves Cameron Brown, operator of the pirate radio station The Plug in Miami, Florida. Agents from the Miami field office documented Brown's pirate radio station operating without authorization 19 times between April 2016 and July 2019, and issued Brown 3 notices of unlicensed operation. As part of the 2023 Miami Pirate Radio Sweep, agents found the station operating again without authorization 3 times in February and March 2023. Given Brown's history of pirate radio operation and his disregard for multiple warnings against him, the Enforcement Bureau thanks the Commission for adopting the NAL and its $358,665 proposed forfeiture, the maximum penalty allowable under the Pirate Act for 3 days of violations. The final case involves Abdias Datis, operator of the pirate radio station Unique FM in Miami, Florida. Agents from the Miami field office documented Datis's pirate radio station operating without authorization 4 times between May 2018 and February 2019. As Datis had not yet been identified as the operator, the Enforcement Bureau did not issue any notices of unlicensed operation at that time. As a part of the Miami Pirate Radio Sweep, agents identified Datis as the operator and found the station broadcasting without authorization 3 times in February and March of 2023. Given Datis's history of pirate radio operation, the Enforcement Bureau thanks the Commission for adopting the NAL and its $120,000 proposed forfeiture. The Enforcement Bureau appreciates the Commission's adoption of these 5 items and requests the grant of editorial privileges.
Thank you. We'll now hear any comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr?
Yeah, thank you so much to the Enforcement Bureau team here, but obviously as well, all of our field agents and our EB offices that are throughout the country, less throughout the country perhaps than in years past, but still throughout the country. Really appreciate all the work that you're doing. Obviously, as the presentations made clear, it's a tremendous amount of legwork, investigative work, time and energy that goes into identifying pirate radios, and obviously each one that we take, there's a lot of work that went into doing that, and so I really appreciate the effort of the team here, again, and the team in the field for the diligence and professionalism that you bring to this, so thanks for your work.
Commissioner Starks?
Thank you so much to the team. As many folks know, I deeply believe in the mission of the Enforcement Bureau. I have had the opportunity of visiting the New York field office and visiting with them, hearing how they go about their work as each of us has noticed here, how extensive the investigations were, the hard work that goes into it. The other thing that I'd mention that stands out, even hearing the presentation here today, a number of these folks are repeat offenders, and that, you know, it is clear, especially how much we're going after these folks. If you are in the pirate business right now, you're in the wrong business, and we are going to look and find you. And so, thank you for the hard work of the team. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Starks. I know you know how the Enforcement Bureau operates well. Commissioner Symington?
Thank you. As a former Broward County resident, I'm particularly appreciative of the work that the team has been doing here, the planning, legwork, and case development to carry out Congress's and the Commission's mission. I also want to note that in addition, obviously, to preserving the specific bans and that are at issue here, shutting down pirate radio does a lot to reduce the noise floor, which is increasingly becoming a problem. So, but I think at this point, everybody knows that it's time to pump up the volume on pirate enforcement. So I really appreciate it.
That was a real hardcore Gen X reference. Commissioner Gomez?
Well done. Thank you very much for your good and your important work.
In this series of enforcement actions, we propose fines against 5 unauthorized radio operators in Florida. These operators were not just using the public airwaves unlawfully, they were increasing the risk for harmful interference of authorized users, and that's just not acceptable. So I really want to thank the field regional management and agents in our Miami field office for their work on these investigations, for their safety. We keep their names out of the public. But this is a team on the front lines of enforcing our rules governing the public airwaves. And I'm really grateful for their efforts, and they were boosted in a big way by recent congressional action in the Pirate Act, as you mentioned, Mr. Rhodes. I also want to thank those in Washington who took up their work and converted it into what we have here today, and that includes Loyan Egal, Jeremy Marcus, Matthew Gibson, Ryan McDonald, Michael Rhodes, David Marks, Robert Keller, and Reggie Brashears from the Enforcement Bureau, and William Dever and Dave Konskal from the Office of General Counsel. And with that, we are bringing this meeting slowly but surely to a close. So would any of my colleagues like to make announcements at this time? Commissioner Carr?
I do, yeah. Give me 1 second, though. Got to pull something up.
The order doesn't change, Commissioner Carr.
Hang on, we're almost there.
Have this pulled up.
He's Googling.
I do have an announcement to make.
Googling.
Arpan Stura is a new legal advisor in my office. Arpan, I think you got to stand up. That's part of the onboarding. A lot of you know Arpan. He's really a true lawyer's lawyer, and he's already sort of hit the ground running in the office, making a tremendous amount of contributions, not just on the law, but on policy issues as well. He's got a wealth of experience in his background from wireless, satellite, consumer protection, media, technology, as well as litigation. Before joining my office, he was a senior counsel to the chief of the FCC's Wireless Bureau, where he focused on spectrum policy, emerging technologies, infrastructure matters. And before that, he spent more than a decade representing clients in the tech and telecom sectors more broadly at a law firm including Hogan Lovells. He went to the University of Texas at Austin and got his JD from William and Mary Law School, where he served on the William and Mary Law Review. So we're really excited to have Arpin joining the team. I think he's going to help us out a lot. And importantly, he significantly increases the average amount of hair in the office, given that I contribute virtually nothing and far less than I used to contribute on that front. So we're excited about that for practical reasons as well.
That is not a metric I knew that we were keeping count. All right, Commissioner Starks.
First off, Arpin, congratulations. Look forward to working with you. I know we pass each other in the hallway here, but I know I look forward to getting to know you and working with you. I know my team does as well. I do have a few announcements myself. As I announced at the last meeting, there have been some changes in my office. My former legal advisor, Morgan Bodenarian, moved on to be policy director and counsel for the Congressional Black Caucus and its chairman, Stephen Horsford. We wish her well in this new role and know she'll continue to do great work. But I'm excited to announce that the Starks office is now back at full strength as we've been joined by Mia Anderson. Please stand and be recognized. She will be my policy advisor. She comes with truly a wealth of congressional experience, most recently serving as policy advisor for Representative Annie Custer. In her role, Mia staffed the Congresswoman and the Communications and Technology Subcommittee of the House Energy and Commerce Committee that we all well know. Her work focused there on improving broadband affordability, addressing the unique challenges of broadband for rural communities, and on promoting the deployment of 5G. Prior to her service there in the House, Mia also worked on the legislative teams for Senator Debbie Stabenow and former Senator Doug Jones. And she got her start on Capitol Hill notably through an internship program designed to create pathways for careers in public service for underrepresented communities. Mia is originally from Los Angeles, California. She went to Dartmouth College. As some of you know, my twin brother went to Dartmouth, and so Mia and I have shared many a cold story of Hanover, New Hampshire. She received her bachelor's there, cum laude, was the first in her family to graduate from college. I hope you all look forward to getting to know what is an extraordinary, powerful advocate who's going to be on my team and get to know her well. Additionally, I have a couple of 4 interns that I want to introduce that are helping me out for this spring term. And so each of them stand to be recognized. Roy Au is a 3L at Georgetown University. Welcome, Roy. Jasmine Held Hernandez, originally from Texas, is a 2L at Arizona State University, Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. She previously worked in our world as part of the FCBA's Diversity Pipeline program that I know a number of folks really champion that program, as do I. We also have Jesse Frankel, a 2L at Pepperdine. Is Jesse here? No, but he is in the office as well from Pepperdine Caruso School of Law. He's currently in class right now. I should have just read the rest of my notes here. No doubt he's studying hard. And finally, we have my early career staff diversity initiative intern, Carolyn Hoffelt, who is a 3L. At Arizona State University, Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Simonton, anything to say?
Nothing at this point. Thank you.
And Commissioner Gomez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I do have some staff announcements today. I am very pleased to announce that the members of my acting staff have agreed to join my office long-term. They bring years of communications, legal, and policy experience, along with a long-standing commitment to public service and a can-do attitude, and I could not be happier with the team. I know we introduced them before, but they get so little time in the limelight that I'm going to do it again. We'll start with Anna Holland, who is unfortunately not here. She's up in the office dealing with some things. She just texted me. Anna Holland is my executive assistant. Her years of experience, organizational skills, good humor, and relationships both inside and outside the commission are an invaluable asset in my office. Edjael Casaperalta, Edjael, if you don't mind standing. I know we've done this before, but we'll do it again. Agile is my legal advisor on wireless, public safety, and consumer matters. Agile has been a key advisor on these important and complex issues over the past 4 months, and her outreach experience has helped me shape my approach to engaging directly with stakeholders both inside and outside of DC. Haley Steffen. Haley is my legal advisor for wireline and space matters. She is a skilled and trustworthy advisor on some of the most complex actions that I have faced in my first 4 months, and I have come to rely on her depth of experience and attention to detail as I engage on these challenging issues. And Dina Shetler. Dina is my chief of staff and legal advisor on media and international issues. Dina, unfortunately, is in jury duty, so she was unable to be here today. But Dina and I have worked together in various iterations over the years, and her breadth of experience in policy issues, her management skills, and her relationships with stakeholders have been indispensable to starting my office on the right foot. And I also would like to announce that Harsha Modalier, who has been my policy advisor but has not been recognized. Harsha, please stand up. Harsha comes to us from the Senate Commerce Committee, and I am so lucky that she has joined us. She is a special advisor working with Dina on media issues and also is our congressional liaison.
All right. Thank you, commissioners. Before we adjourn, I want to make a few announcements, but first I want to share the sad news of the passing of one of our former FCC colleagues. Earlier this month, FCC alum Richard Swanson passed away. Now, Richard began his career in the Coast Guard before joining the commission as a senior engineer. And I just want to acknowledge we have a lot of people who come to this agency from the military, and it's something we really should be proud of. He was an avid Virginia Tech fan and a beloved colleague, and he brought his engineering expertise to a bunch of different offices at the agency. Most notably, he worked in what was then the International Bureau, where he served as chair of the ITU Radio Communications Bureau's Working Party 5B, which included oversight of some really big ticket issues involving global maritime distress and safety systems, as well as some other matters. Now, we know the Hokies have lost a steadfast fan, and the FCC family mourns the loss of a terrific engineer. I also have a few retirements to announce. First, I want to acknowledge the retirement of Andrea Kearney from the Office of General Counsel. Andrea joined the commission in 1996, after a certain law was passed called the Telecommunications Act, and she was fast put to work as an attorney in the former Common Carrier Bureau, where she worked on all kinds of activities associated with the passage of that law. And it was years ago where I first met her. And later she took that expertise, which was deep, to the Office of General Counsel and helped with review of wireless orders and FOIA matters. And she became a go-to expert on complex laws like the Paperwork Reduction Act, Congressional Review Act, and Regulatory Flexibility Act. We really want to thank Andrea for all that she has done for this agency, and we wish her only good things in retirement. Next, Cheryl Siegel's leaving the commission after 46 years at the FCC and 52 years of government service. That's a lot. She first came to the FCC as an agency librarian, but she quickly branched out when she started helping with automating the FCC record because she thought we should make it more available to more people for research. Then she had a vision for a document management system, and she was the spark behind what became the FCC's eDoc system. It's really hard to convey now just how forward-thinking Cheryl was in this area. She was digitizing documents and making them available, and she was doing it before it was trendy. And it's a big step forward in transparency, and I'm really proud to say, as a result of her work, this agency did a lot of that earlier than others. It changed the commission's business in a monumental way, because when we eliminated these paper-based document release processes we had, lots more people could access our information, and we had many fewer bicycle messengers who would hover over a table outside the Office of Public Affairs, competing to grab one of 50 copies of each document. It wasn't that long ago. But she actually didn't stop there. She went on to oversee the development of the first version of the ECFS system, and this is just an incredible record. She was a real visionary here, and I want to thank her for her service. I also want to recognize the recent retirement of Mary Romano and her service to the commission. Mary retires from the Enforcement Bureau, having worked there since its creation in 1999, but that wasn't the limit of her FCC service. The FCC turns 90 years old this year, and Mary actually worked at the FCC for more than half of its existence. Her 47-year tenure began in 1976 when she joined the team that was first called the Common Carrier Bureau. But through all of those jobs she had here, there was one through line, and that was consumer protection. She worked on international calling schemes to protect consumers, junk fax policies to protect consumers, and everyone's favorite enforcement area, robocalls. And Mary resigned from the FCC's consumer complaint. She actually redesigned the FCC's consumer complaint forms for reporting robocalls, and that's actually helped us and has been a big part of our boost in our enforcement in this area. Mary received the FCC's Catherine Forster Public Service Award in 2001 for all of this work on behalf of consumers, and we wish her the best in retirement. Finally, I've got 2 personnel announcements in my office, although the first one, I think Commissioner Gomez made clear. She swiped Dina Shetler. We forgive, we don't forget. We're not going to hold it against her, though. We're just going to congratulate her for her good judgment, because nobody knows the ins and outs of this agency like Dina Shetler. She previously served as the Deputy Chief of Staff for me in the agency, and she did an amazing job helping navigate issues involving reg fees that are complex and difficult, and a whole bunch of IT issues that you don't hear about because she made them work, and she made them work well. If it was complicated and required savvy about how to get things done in this building, Dina was the first person we went to. And so I want to thank Dina for her service, also her good judgment in helping Commissioner Gomez get her office up and running and continuing to help her going forward. I'm really, really grateful. She was part of my team. She made a really big difference while she was. And of course, nobody can truly replace Dina. However, I do need someone to fill her position and take on some of those tasks. And so I'm really happy to announce I'm going to be appointing Sanford Williams to be my new Deputy Chief of Staff. He's going to work with my Chief of Staff, Narda Jones, to help facilitate the day-to-day operations of my office and the Commission. Now, Sanford also knows this agency inside and out. He's worked at the FCC for almost 25 years, and he's currently a special advisor in my office. So I look forward to working with him in this new capacity. And with that, Madam Secretary, will you please announce the next date for the Commission's monthly agenda meeting?
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, February 15th, 2024.
Until then, we stand adjourned.
Good morning, everyone. If any outside conversations, if you please just take them into the hallway or into the foyer, we greatly appreciate it. We'll be getting started with the Chairwoman's post-open meeting press conference in a few minutes. So if you could please take any outside conversations to the foyer, and any of our journalists who are in the room, welcome to the front table. For those who haven't joined us for the first time, I am Paloma Perez. I am the Director of the Office of Media Relations. And for our journalists, we generally allot about one question per person. Sometimes, obviously, if we have a little more flexibility, but just wanted to flag, we at least a minimum want to give folks an opportunity to have some FaceTime with the Chairwoman. So with that, Chairwoman Rosenworcel, I welcome you to the podium.
All right, good morning. It's still morning. That doesn't always happen with these meetings. Let's get started. Matt?
Madam Chairwoman, thanks very much for making the time, as always. Matt Danneman, Communications Daily. I'm going to work in a Weasley two-fer question, if I can, please. First off, on junk fee issues, the agency's been active on that, particularly with early termination fees in video service. Are there other areas where you see the agency may be able to, or looking to address what it considers unnecessary fees in the TMT space? And my second question is, one of the leading presidential candidates has been very active, as he was back in 2016, and talking about addressing licensing issues for media outlets that are considered unfavorable. Is there any role that the agency can, should, will, is able to, how do you see this from a policy point of view? Thank you.
First, I want to give you props for announcing you're going to be Weasley. Not everybody does that. Yeah, no, I mean that sincerely. First, with respect to junk fees, and what we are doing is looking in our dockets and looking in our complaint files, trying to identify the practices that irritate consumers, where they feel they have been treated unfairly, and they're looking for help. So that's what's governed us to date, and that's what will govern us going forward. With respect to the second issue you mentioned, I certainly encourage you to ask of all my colleagues. The First Amendment is something we take seriously, and I take seriously. It stands for the proposition that we cannot prohibit speech that is made by other folks in this country, and the thing that is clearest to me is that we have licensing authority over broadcast stations and not cable stations, and it's something that needs to be understood more widely and certainly in some of our candidate circles.
Thank you. I'm from the Washington Post, Eva Doe, and thanks for taking our questions. Could you talk a bit about what the FCC is doing this year for toward this goal of closing the digital divide, especially with the ACP looks like it will be winding down? What other programs and what is sort of the timeline for those programs?
So the ACP is a tremendous program. It is the largest broadband affordability program in our nation's history. Today, about 23 million households rely on the ACP to get online and stay online. We want to see that program continue, and I've certainly urged Congress to continue to fund the good work it's done because it helps households stay connected and helps in our efforts to close the digital divide. We have a lot of company when it comes to our support for this. There's bipartisan legislation in Congress. More than half of the governors in this country, on a bipartisan basis, have written supporting the ACP. 176 mayors, also on a bipartisan basis, have written supporting the ACP. And I note just in the last 24 hours, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has come out in support. That's a broad-based community of enthusiasm for this program, and I want to make sure it continues. With respect to other initiatives from this agency to close the digital divide, we continue to work on broadband mapping. You're never going to solve a problem you don't measure, so we are refining our maps every week, every day, every month, every year, because we think that's an important tool for policymakers at the federal, state, and local level to continue to use as they address the digital divide. And we know that our colleagues at the Department of Commerce with the BEAD money use those maps. We are also continuing to be active with our universal service programs, the high-cost program that helps support broadband in rural insular areas of this country. Also, the E-rate program, which is a real dynamo. It has for many years helped support broadband in schools and libraries in every state across the country. And the rural health care program, which is a program that helps make sure that health centers in remote locations have the communications they need to make sure they can offer all kinds of new telehealth and serve their patients who might be hours physically from where doctors or other healthcare providers might reside. We've also have a statutory obligation to continue our Lifeline program, which helps low-income households too. So we got a lot of things that are ongoing, and we're going to continue to do those, but we are also going to continue to update Congress about the status of ACP, because even as we have to take steps, responsible steps, to look at how we wind it down, we want to make sure Congress understands the good this program is doing so that it can continue. All right.
Thanks so much, Chairwoman. And with that, I'd like to call my colleague up, Katie Gorsak, who will be leading the Bureau press conference. Katie?
and I'm not even on my microphone. Sorry about that. So we'll start off with the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, and then we'll go from there. So first is a report and order and further notice of proposed rulemaking on improving network reliability, resiliency, and transparency during disasters. Are there any questions on this particular item? Matt? Any from you, Eve? Nope. Okay. We'll move on to the next public safety item. That's a report and order that looks to improve wireless 911 call routing. Any questions on this one? Matt, okay. The Bureau could just please step up.
Sorry to delay you getting out of here. Real quick question on the location-based routing item. Any notable changes from the draft?
No, there were some edits made based on comments or ex partes, but substantially the item is the same. Thank you.
And when can regular consumers see this change? When they're making a call?
David?
Well, as was indicated in the presentation and in the order, some of the carriers have already started to implement this technology, so the location-based routing is already in existence in some areas with some carriers. The item sets deadlines for all carriers to do it. Once it is in place, it will be transparent to consumers. The result that a consumer will see is that the right PSAP will answer their 911 call. So if, for example, I live in Montgomery County, if I am making a 911 call and it's answered, it will be answered in Montgomery County even if the tower that's taking the call is in DC. So for me, for me as a consumer, for anybody as a consumer, you will not have to go through the transfer process where the first PSAP that answers the call says, please hold while we transfer you to another PSAP.
Sorry, I meant, is there a deadline for all carriers to have it implemented, or is it?
Yes, it's 6 months for the nationwide carriers from the effective date of the rules and 24 months for the other carriers.
Any other questions on this? Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, so next we'll move on to an order on reconsideration on mitigating orbital debris to support space innovation, which was presented by our Space Bureau. I see Matt has a question, so if they wouldn't mind coming up. Thank you so much.
Julie, thanks. There was some space operator lobbying regarding case-by-case application review issues on this item. Were there any changes made to the order to reflect the issues raised? Anything substantive?
Yes, there were a few items, and I'm going to turn it over to Carl Kensinger.
Yeah, so there were edits to acknowledge those, obviously the ex partes, and some changes to the language, although no fundamental changes to the outcome of the order.
Okay, so nothing in the actual case-by-case analysis itself, just reflection of what was brought up ex parte-wise?
Yeah, exactly. A little more discussion of the case-by-case approach and the goals of it.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Any questions on this one? No? Okay, great. Thanks all.
Thank you.
All right, and last is a set of items from the Enforcement Bureau on proposed fines against 5 Florida-based pirate radio operators. Matt looks like he has a question on this one, so if you want to come on up.
Thank you very much. These big fines were authorized under the Pirate Act to try to make the actual collection of these fines by U.S. attorneys a little more attractive. Is there any sign that DOJ is taking the bait, that these are being pursued, or that DOJ is more interested than it had been previously in pirate radio fines?
I guess I would answer first by saying these are proposed fines so that all of the targets have an opportunity to file a response, and then the commission will evaluate those responses and, if appropriate, issue the fines. In terms of internal discussions with the Department of Justice, I'm not going to comment on that.
So this will conclude today's Bureau press conference. I believe Commissioner Carr is here as well, so I will leave it to him. Thank you so much.
All right, so good to see the two of you. I think last press conference had one, so we are doubling. Next month, I'm hoping to see 4 at least. But it's good to be with you all. Good to start the year off here. From my perspective, one thing just to emphasize off the top, I really enjoyed the chance to work with Commissioner Symington. He and I worked together on a paper that is sort of relevant as the Supreme Court right now is taking up a number of these social media content moderation cases, including one of the Texas laws. And so we filed a paper that looks at that type of a case. And essentially the argument that a lot of social media companies are making is that their decisions with respect to content moderation are entirely beyond the reach of the government, whether it's the federal government or, in these cases, state government. And what our paper does is it walks through the Supreme Court precedents on this that are most relevant to that type of a scenario and explains why it's entirely consistent with the First Amendment to impose some common sense guardrails on content regulation by social media companies, whether it's the Turner case, whether it's Pruneyard, whether it's Rumsfeld. We sort of walk through those cases and explain why lawmakers like those in Texas can regulate social media in terms of prohibiting censorship of viewpoints entirely consistent with the First Amendment. So just wanted to highlight that filing, and with that, happy to take some questions.
Commissioner, thanks much for making the time. A good segue into what I was going to ask, which is one of the leading presidential candidates has been very active in discussing the need, and he has historically discussing the need for the FCC to be active in looking at licenses of media outlets that are unfavorable in content. I'm wondering, is there any role that you see in the FCC in addressing licenses or bully pulpit? How should it be addressing the presidential candidate's concerns? Thank you.
You know, look, as we move into election season, I'm not going to be making comments on every statement from candidates as they're working through this process. So in that one in particular, I don't have a comment for you.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the status of the Rip and Replace program for removing Huawei and ZTE equipment from rural networks. It seems like the funding, just getting the rest of the funding, has been stalled for so long. Is it necessary? What are your thoughts? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a really important issue. So as you know, we've headed down this path of ripping and replacing insecure equipment, including Huawei gear. And the amount of funding that we have to complete that process has fallen several $1 billion short. And there's been a lot of efforts and runs at trying to top up that funding because there are some consequences that come from not including the funding. It doesn't necessarily mean that the gear won't come out of the networks, but it will make replacing that gear incredibly difficult, which itself could lead to holes in coverage, including in rural areas, which is a problem for public safety as well as just connectivity in general. So I do think this is something that should continue to be a priority for Congress to find a vehicle to top up the rip and replace program. And more broadly, I think there's work that the FCC can continue to do that we have done to promote trusted, secure gear in our networks. So, yeah. Yeah, go for it.
You've been very active on telehealth issues with the FCC, been somewhat of a spearhead on that. I'm curious, we're in a new year, 2024. What are your regulatory priorities? What things would you like to see this agency realistically do that you hope to be active on in this 2024?
Yeah, telehealth is a good one. We still have a number of programs that are ongoing, including one of our pilot programs. That was a 3-year pilot program. So that's underway, and we're looking to get some feedback there about some long-term reforms we could do. More broadly, my priorities are pretty straightforward. First is spectrum. we're in sort of a tough spot right now as a country. We have been stalling out on spectrum for quite a while, and I think we're sort of worse than stalling out at this point. Obviously, for one, our auction authority has expired. But for another one, I think the Biden administration is really not showing the bold leadership necessary to move things forward on spectrum. Their national spectrum strategy, for instance, came out late last year, and it committed to making available exactly 0 megahertz of spectrum. And so I thought that was a really big miss. There's still stuff that we can do here at the FCC as well. Even with the lack of auction authority, there are steps that we can take to open up spectrum, including unlicensed spectrum. And I've walked through a calendar of actions that I think we should be taking to move ahead with that. On infrastructure as well, there's a lot more that we can be doing. We are in the midst of a lot of infrastructure builds right now in this country, including those that are ramping up, not from BEAD yet, because the dirt hasn't started to been turned on any BEAD project yet, but with ARPA and other dollars. But if we're just spending money, but we're not streamlining the permitting process, then that's like stepping on the gas and the brakes at the same time. So I think there's more permitting reform. So the top 2 things that I would like to do that I think would have a lot of benefits would be, 1, get going on spectrum again. 2, look to streamline a lot of these infrastructure rules. And 3 is the point on national security. I think there's even more that we can continue to do to address some threats that come from insecure gear in our networks. So those are some of the top things that I think that this year or any year the FCC should be working on.
And to follow on that last point about the national security threats, what could you discuss a little more in detail? What are some things you think the FCC should do this year?
Yeah, one of the things that we've done up to now, for instance, is we've prohibited coveredless gear, including Huawei and ZTE gear, from being approved on a going forward basis for use in the U.S. So, for instance, potentially new models of those gears. What we have only sought comment on potentially is revoking existing authorizations and making it very clear that this gear cannot continue to be sold in the U.S. So I think going to an order on those types of issues would be one example of an additional step that we could take on national security issues. Great. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.